things local while on the go. Read it on your smartphone or tablet. Download now by searching Bakersfield Californian in the Apple, Google, and Amazon app stores.
This is Strictly Business, presented by the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce. Sponsored in part by the law offices of Young Wooldridge, San Joaquin Community Hospital,
Good morning and welcome to Strictly Business for Monday, January 12th, 2015. I'm Nathan Ollie, Manager of Government Affairs at the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce. Joining me later on today is Elaine McNerney of Dress for Success. She'll discuss the importance of the right first impression on a job interview and how a local nonprofit is helping women gain financial independence. Then Jerry Pearson of Young Wooldridge will discuss the new laws that are now effective in 2015 and what employers need to know. And later in this segment, we'll have Nick Ortiz, the Manager of Production Regions for the Western States Petroleum Association. But first, let's take a look at what's in the news. Senator Barbara Boxer announced last Thursday that she will not seek re-election in 2016. This is the first retirement announcement from a Democratic senator ahead of the 2016 political cycle that will spark a major political contest in California. Boxer was elected to the House in 1983 and won her Senate seat in 1992, the so-called Year of the Woman. She has served alongside the Golden State Senior Senator Dianne Feinstein, making up one of the first all-female Senate teams from any of the 50 states. Boxer, who in recent years served as head of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, has been a consistently liberal voice in the often fractured Senate. Rumors of her potential retirement had been swirling since late last year, and recent polling suggested that her popularity was in decline, despite being from a deep blue state. A recent statewide poll gave her a 41% approval rating, and a third-quarter Federal Election Commission filing showed that Boxer had just under $149,000 in cash on hand, indicating that she was not aggressively fundraising for re-election. Boxer's retirement sets up what could be an epic, protracted, and incredibly expensive Democratic primary to replace her in a state that hasn't had an open Senate race since George H.W. Bush was president. Turning to transportation news, California leaders broke ground for the high-speed rail last week. A groundbreaking ceremony took place in Fresno for the ambitious but controversial high-speed rail project, marking another milestone for Governor Jerry Brown and for foreign manufacturers waiting to bid on lucrative train contracts. Once completed, the high-speed rail will stretch 800 miles and will allow riders to get from LA to San Francisco in less than 3 hours, with a train traveling at speeds of more than 200 miles per hour. The United States lags behind Europe and Asia in building both high-speed rail and its trains. The project is expected to be the legacy project for Governor Brown, whose unprecedented fourth inauguration took place on Monday, the day before the groundbreaking. President Obama also wanted high-speed rail to be one of his signature transportation accomplishments. But in the 6 years since he took office, plans have lagged or been squashed. California's rail system is the most ambitious project and one of the few to make progress, although it has been mired in environmental lawsuits and eminent domain land disputes. Funding also remains a major hurdle for high-speed rail. In 2008, California voters approved nearly $10 billion in bonds to kickstart the project, which is estimated to eventually cost $68 billion. Tuesday's groundbreaking ceremony comes months after construction started on the first phase of rail near Fresno, the largest city in California's agricultural Central Valley and a region of high unemployment. In other news, modern stand-up desks are coaxing office workers back on their feet. Advocates of workplace wellness initiatives are hoping that 2015 will be the year of stand-up desks that are historically favored by great minds from Leonardo da Vinci to Virginia Woolf, and hoping that they will reconfigure the modern cubicle. Some 50 to 70% of people spend 6 or more hours each day sitting, according to a 2012 study from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Surveys. Fitness experts say that office workers are particularly susceptible to what has been dubbed the sitting disease. Prolonged sitting is associated with an increased risk of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, obesity, and early mortality. Medical studies show that even people who are active are not immune to health concerns resulting from hours of sitting. The American Council on Exercise has offered its workers the option of standing workstations for more than 2 years. There are various types of stand-up desks, from freestanding workstations to others that are placed on top of a regular desk or a table. Looking at the environment, Governor Brown is toughening his climate change goals. As he was sworn in for a record fourth term last week, Governor Jerry Brown charted an ambitious new goal for California in its fight against climate change. The governor challenged state officials to increase renewable energy use to 50% over the next 15 years. Brown specifically called for the state to increase renewable electricity sources, reduce petroleum use in vehicles, double the energy efficiency of existing buildings, and make heating fuels cleaner by 2030. California is already known as a leader in far-reaching environmental laws, but the governor said existing results were not enough. The current state goal calls for 33% of energy use to come from renewable sources by the year 2020. As of last year, nearly 25% of California's retail electricity came from renewable energy, not including large dams, according to the state's Energy Commission. With the start of the new year, now is a good time for all of us to remind employers of the priorities of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission says that it will focus on throughout 2015 and 2016. One would be eliminating barriers in recruitment and hiring. The EEOC will target class-based recruitment and hiring practices that discriminate against racial, ethnic, and religious groups, older workers, women, and people with disabilities. Also, the EEOC is focusing on protecting immigrant, migrant, and other vulnerable workers. They will target disparate pay, job segregation, harassment, human trafficking, and discriminatory policies affecting vulnerable workers who may be unaware of their rights under equal employment laws or who may be reluctant or unable to exercise those rights. Also, the EEOC will target emerging issues in equal unemployment law, including issues associated with significant events, demographic changes, developing theories, new legislation, judicial decisions, and administrative interpretations. Fourth, the EEOC will target compensation systems based on practices that discriminate based on gender. They will also target policies and practices that discourage or prohibit individuals from exercising their rights under employment discrimination statutes or that impede the EEOC's investigative or enforcement efforts. And finally, the EEOC will pursue systemic investigations and litigation and conduct a targeted outreach campaign to deter harassment in the workplace. Drivers may be rejoicing at the pump as gas prices continue to fall to record lows, but the dip in gas prices is fueled by the declining cost for a barrel of oil, which now sits at $49 a barrel. With oil prices down, there's been a lot of talk about the impact it could have right here in Kern County. Here to discuss what this means is Nick Ortiz. He's the manager of production regions with the Western States Petroleum Association. Hi, Nick. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Nathan.
Sure. So how do lower prices affect oil companies?
Well, you know, a blip in pricing is not something that is going to affect the companies that I represent, the members of the Western States Petroleum Association, because our members have large and very multi-year plans about what their development activities are going to be. And they invest a lot of time in developing those plans, and of course, they're very capital intensive. But a blip in oil prices does not mean that they rethink the plan immediately. However, if there's a sustained drop in oil prices, which I think we're seeing now, right. What that's going to do is have companies look back at their capital expenditure budgets. It's going to have them reevaluate their development plans and look for ways to tighten the belt going forward. So I think everybody wants a magic ball so they know exactly where the sweet spot is, what oil is going to be 6 months from now. But unfortunately, nobody has that crystal ball. So the best we can do is really reevaluate those long-term plans.
Okay. Well, you touched a little bit on it. Recently, Ensign announced a large layoff here, 700 workers, I believe it was. Do you believe other companies will follow right away, or is this, again, a case of reevaluating and maybe something down the road?
Well, and that is a service company. So they're not an oil producer, but they're a service company that works with a lot of the oil producers here in Kern County. And I think it's going to depend on the service company side, what services they offer. And if they offer niche services that, maybe companies are not going to spend so much on, then we could see some labor displacements. It really just depends on exactly what services each company offers.
Okay. So while we're in this sort of wait and see period, both for the oil companies themselves and for some of the service providers, how can the workforce prepare? What do you recommend to employees of your member companies, and say, how do you prepare for something like this?
Well, I mean, I think that, interestingly enough, Kern County is a hub for energy production of many kinds, whether it's electricity, whether it's renewable energy, whether it's oil and gas. And frankly, a lot of those skills actually are analogous or correlate to those other energy development industries. So, there's an example here of one of the community colleges has an energy training center, and that's all, it was previously all about clean energy, like wind turbines and solar installations, and half the graduates go into renewable, half the graduates go into oil. So I think that we have a robust energy industry, and I think there's going to be a lot of skills that are going to be analogous, and people are going to be able to get picked up by other industries. And we're fortunate in Kern County to kind of have the three-legged stool of industries, whether it's oil, agricultural, and development. Right. And two of those are facing some challenges with water and agriculture and low barrel costs and a lot of new regulations in the oil industry. But development, and especially infrastructure, public sector development, seems to be coming back pretty well. So I think that there are going to be opportunities for folks who are displaced.
Okay. So what other kind of impacts do you see in the local economy, even if it's not necessarily a layoff? Mm-hmm. What other kind of impacts could you see coming down the pike for the local economy?
I just think it's going to cause a refocus of some folks who are, really dependent or interdependent on the oil industry. I can give you the example of a local company who has a restaurant, and a big portion of their marketing is oil field service workers coming down Rosedale Highway. And they said, well, now we're going to focus on catering. Now we're going to focus on, getting a different kind of niche, a different type of business into us. And I think that that's what everybody's going to have to do, especially if it's sustained. If oil prices go back up, of course, that's going to be great for Kern County's economy, great for the county tax rolls. If we continue to see this sustained drop or sustained low prices in the world market, I think that will have multiple impacts, both to local business and to local government.
Okay, great. Nick Ortiz, Western States Petroleum Association, thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
We'll be back right after this with more Strictly Business.